Archangel Michael says pause for a moment. Breathe slowly. You didn't find this message by accident. There is a reason your heart feels heavier tonight, and there is a reason these words are meeting your eyes right now. He says your soul has been carrying questions it never learned how to ask out loud, questions wrapped in silence, hidden behind strength, buried under responsibility. Tonight, heaven leans close, not to judge you, not to test you, but to finally explain what your pain has truly been about. He says you've spent years wondering why life felt harder for you than for others, why doors closed just as you reached them, why love slipped away when you needed it most, why you had to grow up faster, endure longer, and heal without guidance. Archangel Michael wants you to know something important before anything else unfolds. None of it was a punishment. Not a single tear, not a single loss, not a single lonely night. You learned to smile while breaking inside. You learned to say, "I'm fine," when your chest felt like it was collapsing. Archangel Michael says heaven saw that. Every quiet battle you fought without applause, every time you showed up for others while neglecting your own wounds. You thought no one noticed. You were wrong. Heaven never looked away from you, not even once. There were nights you lay awake replaying moments you wish you could rewrite, conversations that ended too soon, choices you questioned long after making them, people you lost without closure. Archangel Michael says those nights were sacred moments, even if they felt cruel, because those moments were shaping your depth, your empathy, your spiritual strength. Pain was not sent to destroy you, it was allowed to prepare you. He says you often blamed yourself for things that were never in your control. You thought if you had been stronger, smarter, quicker, more patient, things would have turned out differently. But heaven is shaking its head right now. You carried responsibility that was never assigned to you. You took ownership of storms that were never yours to calm. Archangel Michael says there is something deeply important your soul must hear. You were not abandoned, you were being trained. While others were given comfort, you were given clarity. While others were protected from hardship, you were protected through hardship. Heaven trusted your strength, even when you doubted it yourself. You didn't break because you were weak, you bent because you were chosen to endure. Every disappointment sharpened your awareness, every delay refined your patience, every loss stripped away illusions that would have later destroyed you. Archangel Michael says what you call suffering, heaven calls refinement. There were moments you felt unseen, unheard, forgotten. You wondered if God skipped over your name, if your prayers dissolved into silence. Archangel Michael says the silence was not absence, it was timing. Some answers arrive as words, others arrive as transformation, and you, without realizing it, were transforming. He says, look at how much you understand now. Look at how deeply you feel. Look at how carefully you love. That wisdom was born in places comfort could never reach. If your life had been easier, your soul would be smaller. If your path had been smoother, your purpose would be weaker. Heaven never punishes growth, it cultivates it. You questioned why certain people left without explanation, why connections faded, why relationships collapsed just when you felt safe. Archangel Michael says some exits were protection, some endings were divine intervention, some losses saved you from futures that would have broken your spirit completely. You weren't being rejected, you were being redirected. Heaven was quietly rearranging your life so that when the right chapter arrived, you would be strong enough to stand in it without shrinking. Pain cleared space, silence cleared noise, loneliness cleared illusions. Archangel Michael says your suffering carried instructions. It taught you boundaries. It taught you discernment. It taught you to listen to your intuition when logic failed. You didn't just survive, you learned, and learning was the real assignment. There were times you felt angry at God for allowing so much, times you questioned divine fairness. Heaven never condemned you for that. Archangel Michael says God understands human pain more than you realize. Your questions did not push heaven away, they pulled heaven closer. You were never being tested to see if you'd fail. You were being trained to see if you'd rise. And even on the days you thought you failed, heaven saw progress. Even on the days you gave up emotionally, your soul kept moving forward. Archangel Michael says something powerful is beginning now, because once the lesson is integrated, the suffering loosens its grip. What hurt you no longer controls you. What haunted you no longer defines you. What broke you no longer owns you. You may not see it yet, but your season is shifting. The heaviness you've been carrying is starting to lift. The confusion is thinning. The clarity is approaching. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. The chapter that required pain is closing. Archangel Michael says stay present. Don't rush. Don't scroll away, because what comes next will explain not only where you've been, but where you're going. Your suffering was never a punishment. It was preparation for something that finally matches your soul.
Archangel Michael says, now listen carefully, because this is where everything begins to connect. You've always felt different, even when you tried to fit in. Different thoughts, different depth, different reactions to life. You wondered why normal paths never felt right for you, why what satisfied others left you empty. Heaven wants you to know this wasn't confusion, it was calling. You were never meant for a small life. That's why comfort couldn't hold you. That's why routines suffocated you. That's why shallow connections drained you. Archangel Michael says your soul carries an assignment that required isolation before activation. You needed silence before direction. You needed loss before clarity. You questioned why people misunderstood you so easily, why your intentions were doubted, why your heart was judged instead of understood. Heaven saw that too. Archangel Michael says when a soul carries light, it exposes shadows unintentionally. Not everyone could stay. Not everyone was meant to. Some people left because they benefited from your broken version, not your healed one. Some relationships ended because they could not survive your growth. Some doors closed because what was behind them no longer matched who you were becoming. This was not rejection. This was protection in motion. You often felt like you were giving more than you received, loving deeper, caring harder, showing up even when it cost you. Archangel Michael says that generosity of spirit was never wasted. It trained your heart to love without attachment, to give without losing yourself, to stand firm without becoming cold. There were moments you wanted to harden, to shut down, to stop feeling so much, but something inside you refused to close. That was divine design. Heaven protected your softness because your softness is not weakness. It is discernment. It is wisdom. It is strength that doesn't need armor. Archangel Michael says you were pulled away from certain paths because success there would have cost you your soul. You were delayed because shortcuts would have corrupted your purpose. You were slowed down because speed would have blurred your vision. Timing saved you more times than you realize. You felt like life kept saying wait when you were ready to move. That waiting wasn't denial, it was calibration. Heaven was aligning circumstances, people, and inner strength so that when movement came, it would be unstoppable and sustainable. There is something important Michael wants you to understand now. Not everyone who walks away is an enemy. Some are lessons. Some are mirrors. Some are transitions. Holding on to them would have anchored you to versions of yourself you've already outgrown. You weren't losing people. You were shedding layers. Layers of fear, layers of approval seeking, layers of self-doubt, layers that no longer served your next chapter. Growth feels like grief when you don't yet see what's replacing what you lost. Archangel Michael says you learned how to sit with discomfort without escaping, how to be alone without becoming empty, how to rebuild yourself without applause. Those skills were not random, they were required for what's coming next. You asked God why you had to understand pain so deeply. Heaven answers now, because you are meant to understand people deeply, because you are meant to lead with compassion, not control, because your voice will reach hearts logic never could. You may not see yourself as strong, but heaven does. Strength is not loud. Strength is endurance with integrity. Strength is choosing growth over bitterness. Strength is keeping your heart open after it's been bruised. You did that even when it hurt. Archangel Michael says the loneliness you felt was not abandonment, it was separation. Separation from noise, separation from distraction, separation from influences that would have diluted your truth. Solitude refined your inner compass. You developed intuition because you had no one to rely on but yourself and God. You learned to read energy because words failed you. You learned to trust inner nudges because external validation disappeared. That inner guidance will now lead you forward. There is a shift happening inside you already. You feel less desperate to prove, less willing to chase, less afraid of being misunderstood. That's not exhaustion, that's alignment. When purpose activates, approval loses power. Archangel Michael says your soul is stepping into authority, not over others, but over your own life, over your choices, over your boundaries, over your direction. That's why chaos no longer feels exciting. Drama no longer feels attractive. Peace is becoming non-negotiable. You were stripped of illusions so you could build truth. You were humbled so you could remain grounded. You were challenged so you could remain conscious. Heaven doesn't elevate what hasn't been stabilized. Some of your prayers weren't answered the way you wanted because heaven had a wider view. You asked for relief, heaven gave you resilience. You asked for answers, heaven gave you insight. You asked for love, heaven taught you self-worth first. Archangel Michael says what's coming next requires the version of you that knows who they are without needing permission, the version of you that doesn't collapse when misunderstood, the version of you that can stand alone without feeling lonely. This is why your suffering had limits. It never destroyed your integrity. It never took your empathy. It never hardened your spirit. That was divine protection. Pain was allowed, but corruption was not. You are now approaching a threshold, a point where lessons turn into leverage, where wounds turn into wisdom, where survival turns into leadership. This is where many people quit, but you stayed. That's why you're still here. Archangel Michael says, breathe. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not broken. You are precisely where preparation meets purpose, and what comes next will confirm everything you endured.
Archangel Michael says, this is the moment everything shifts. You may not hear thunder. You may not see signs in the sky, but something deep inside you is already changing. The heaviness you carried for so long is loosening its grip. The tightness in your chest is easing. This is not imagination. This is release. Heaven wants you to know that you are no longer in the season of endurance. That chapter is closing quietly but completely. The strength you built through pain has fulfilled its purpose. You are stepping into a season where effort meets flow, where clarity replaces confusion, where peace becomes your foundation instead of a distant wish. Archangel Michael says there is a blessing activating now that could only arrive after everything you've lived through. Not before, not during, only after. Because this blessing requires discernment. It requires humility. It requires a heart that understands loss without becoming bitter. You have noticed it already in subtle ways. You react less. You observe more. You no longer chase what once consumed you. You no longer beg for what walks away. That is not numbness. That is maturity. That is alignment. That is authority returning to you.
Heaven says you are being repositioned. Old cycles are ending. Repetitive patterns are breaking. Situations that once drained you will no longer have access to you. Not because you built walls, but because you learned boundaries. Boundaries protect peace, and peace protects purpose. Archangel Michael says something important about timing. What you were about to receive could not have arrived earlier. Earlier, you would have doubted it, questioned it, sabotaged it. Now you can hold it with steady hands and a grounded heart. You once thought delays meant denial. Now you understand they meant development. Heaven was building your capacity so that when expansion arrived, it wouldn't overwhelm you. You are no longer afraid of responsibility. You are ready for it. The loneliness that once hurt you will now serve you. It taught you independence. It taught you discernment. It taught you how to sit with yourself without escaping. That inner stability will anchor everything that enters your life next. Archangel Michael says, expect clarity. Expect invitations that feel calm instead of chaotic. Expect opportunities that don't demand you abandon yourself. Expect connections that feel safe, mutual, and grounded. Anything that requires you to shrink will no longer tempt you. You are stepping into a chapter you once prayed for, but later forgot you even asked for because the waiting was so long. Heaven never forgot. Heaven never lost track of you. Every step was recorded. Every tear was counted. Every moment of restraint mattered. There is forgiveness happening now, not just toward others, but toward yourself. You are finally releasing guilt for things that were never your fault. You are forgiving the version of you that didn't know better. That forgiveness is unlocking peace you haven't felt in years. Archangel Michael says your purpose is no longer hidden. It may not be fully visible yet, but you can feel its direction. You are being guided toward work, people, and environments that honor your depth instead of exploiting it. You will notice that chaos loses its grip on you. Drama feels exhausting instead of exciting. Validation feels unnecessary instead of urgent. This is not detachment. This is grounding. You are becoming unshakable in quiet ways. Heaven says, do not underestimate what you survived. Many would have hardened. Many would have closed their hearts. Many would have lost faith. You didn't. You questioned, but you stayed. You bent, but you didn't break. That resilience is now turning into wisdom. Archangel Michael says the future you are stepping into will feel unfamiliar at first, not because it's wrong, but because peace can feel strange after chaos. Stability can feel boring after survival. Give yourself time to adjust. You will no longer need to explain yourself to people who never tried to understand you. Your life will speak for you. Your energy will answer questions words never could. Alignment silences doubt naturally. Heaven is asking you to trust what feels calm. Trust what doesn't rush you. Trust what allows you to breathe. Those are not signs of stagnation. They are signs of safety. Archangel Michael says your suffering did not make you late. It made you ready. You are arriving exactly on time for the life that matches who you've become, not who you used to be. From this moment forward, choose presence over panic, discernment over desperation, peace over proving. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. Heaven already confirmed it. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your aligned life, one built on truth, strength, and self-respect, one protected by wisdom instead of fear. Archangel Michael says, take one more slow breath. Let go of what you've been carrying. You don't need it anymore. The season of survival is complete. Your suffering was never a punishment. It was preparation. And now you are ready.